Hello everyone, my name is Jimmy and welcome to The Last Lap. In today's video we're going to be recapping the Xfinity Indy Cup race from Richmond Raceway. I was there, so I'll give a little bit of my opinion on the racing itself and give you guys a little bit of a highlight of my day, what I did, all that kind of stuff. But before we hop into that, just want to remind you guys to hit that like button and subscribe button. That would help us out. We would greatly appreciate it. You can also check us out on our Instagram page at The Last Lap News. And also for YouTube, you can hit that little notification bell to let you know when we upload videos, because the past week or two we haven't uploaded on Mondays and Fridays like we usually do, just because of work schedule, school stuff. I was at the race, so we're recording this a day late, all that kind of stuff. But if you hit that notification bell, that'll let you know as soon as we upload a video so you guys can watch it right away. And as always, I have my friend and co-host Matthew joining me on the show, and it was our first short track race of the season. We're getting ready for our next short track race of the season in Martinsville. This is a pretty good stretch of racing that we're going to have in the next few weeks, so I'm excited for it. But Matthew, how do you feel post-Richmond heading into this week going into Martinsville?
Well, Richmond gave us a different taste for how the racing went this week. It wasn't like how the first few races of the season has been, but it was still interesting with all the strategy that happened. So that kept it a little bit interesting. But I'm ready for Martinsville now. Some good old short track racing.
Yeah, it was. I was there, and the third stage was quite confusing because I had a scanner, but it wasn't working that good, so I couldn't hear the broadcaster saying what was going on. So I thought I knew what was going on, but I really didn't. And yeah, it was pretty confusing in that third stage there with the whole strategy and everything. But I'm gonna briefly touch on the Xfinity race. You can touch on it later if you want. But that came down to, it was actually the last 15 laps were between John Hunter Nemechek and Ty Gibbs. Each of them exchanged bumps with each other, bumping each other out of the way. Ty Gibbs ended up getting the last shot at John Hunter Nemechek going into turn 3 on the final lap, and he would go on to win the race. Wasn't the smoothest of moves. He kind of ran him up the track and everything, but it's short track racing, and everybody's going to have their opinion on that. Seems, right now everybody's like, where's the line of doing that? Like, what's fair and what's not? But, at the end of the day, Ty Gibbs had more to win and to lose than John Hunter Nemechek did. So, in my eyes, Rubin's racing, but other people might have some different opinions. But I'm going to quickly go through my day at the track. So I got there probably around 11 a.m. The driver intros were at 3, so that gave me some time to kill. So I went inside the midway area, looked around. They had some type of pogo stick thing there, which was okay. I didn't watch much of it. Langley Speedway, they had a couple late model cars there, so that was pretty cool. Merchandise haulers, as always, they were there. Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott are the two singular drivers with merchandise haulers there, so those were there. Toyota had their thing set up. Chevrolet had their thing set up. Bob Hawkers actually did a tweet up at 12:15, so I was able to hang out with him for a bit. There was a lot of people there. I was surprised. There was probably 30 to 50 people there. There's actually a picture on his Twitter. I'll post it in the video probably, in case you can see me in the left corner of the picture. So that was pretty cool to talk with him. He talked about next gen stuff, how drivers are racing each other, racetrack stuff, all kinds of stuff. It's just cool to ask him some questions, and he's a really cool guy. So that was cool. That was my first time meeting him face to face like that. And then I went into the racetrack, the grandstands area, and I went to my my secret spot, and I was able to get a picture with Denny Hamlin, one with Austin Cindric, and one with Joe Gibbs. So that was really cool. I may have been able to get a few more drivers if I went over there a little bit earlier, but the tweet up with Bob Hawkers went late. But after that, I went to my seat, and my friend and his family, I let them have my other tickets because I didn't use them, so they met me there. They didn't get there right till driver intro, so that was pretty crazy. But the race started, and from there on, yeah, so Stages 1 and 2 are pretty smooth. Stage 2 is really when the pit strategy started to come into play. Some drivers did 2 stops in stage 2, some drivers did 3. The only real incident of the day was Austin Cindric got spun around. I believe it was Cole Custer or Ty Dillon got into him or something like that off of turn 2 on the backstretch. Ryan Blaney and Ross Chastain got into it a little bit. They were bumping and banging with each other. Ross Chastain bumped Ryan Blaney one time, and then later in the race, Ryan Blaney returned the favor and gave him a pretty big shot. But yeah, stage 3, let me get to the other thing before stage 3. So, this actually happened in stage 3, so I'll get to that when I get there. So William Byron, he was the leader at this point in stage 3, and he stayed out and ran 90 laps on his tires. Martin Truex Jr. had 10 to 12 laps fresher tires than him, so they had a really long green flag run to the end of the race, so the two of them were out front. Byron had a pretty big lead over Truex at the time. And then NASCAR decides to throw a black flag, and I was in the grandstands, and I was wondering why they were throwing a black flag, and they kept showing Kyle Busch's car, and they kept showing like the grill and the nose of the car, so I didn't know if he had like a hole in the nose or what. But later after the race, I checked Twitter, and you told me obviously and all that, but Kyle Busch was black flagged because he had a piece of tape on the grill, and that is a no-no this year with the next gen car. So they black flagged him. He had to come down pit road. They had to take that off, but apparently it took them 200 laps to see that. They put it on way earlier in the race, and NASCAR didn't see it until like 50 laps to go in the race. So they black flagged him. He came down pit road. In my quick opinion, obviously that's the right call for them to black flag him for that, but you got to make that call a lot sooner than that. You got to call that within 10-15 laps of it happening. Either way, I don't think he probably would have won the race. I don't think he had a race-winning car. He still ended up finishing in the top 10, so it didn't really hurt him too much. He may have been able to get a top 5 out of it, but yeah, just a little bit of a late call on NASCAR's part there. But yeah, after that Kyle Busch getting black flagged pretty much drew everybody else down pit road to get some tires, including Denny Hamlin and Kevin Harvick. So they pitted with about 48, 47 laps to go. And at this point, I thought William Byron was going to pit again because he pitted before Martin Truex. I thought he was going to do 2 stops, but apparently William Byron's crew chief decided to make him stay out there, so he stayed out. Martin Truex was slowly catching him over time, but Denny Hamlin was coming with those fresh tires. I have it down right here. He was 14 seconds back of the leader with 25 laps to go. And I believe by the time it was like 10 laps to go, it was down to like 6 seconds or something like that. So Denny Hamlin was coming on those fresh tires, and as I'm watching all of this unfold, I wasn't even watching Denny Hamlin. I was watching William Byron and Martin Truex Jr. I thought it was going to be a battle between them because Truex was slowly closing the gap. And then I'm making my way down the grandstands because I like to stand at the start-finish line to, get the burnout on video and all that. And I go down there, William Byron's leading. I look up and Denny Hamlin's leading. And I'm like, where in the world did Denny Hamlin come from? I thought it was going to be a battle between Byron and Truex. But I look up and see Denny Hamlin's leading. I'm like, what in the world just happened? So I see Denny Hamlin win the race, and I get his video burnout on video and everything. And I didn't even really know what happened until I got in the car afterwards and saw that Denny Hamlin had a lot fresher tires and all that. So it was quite crazy, that final stage with pit strategy. As for, the racing itself, on TV, I'm sure it looked like a very boring race, but in person, I could see the drivers sliding off of turn 4. Several drivers slid off turn 4 trying to almost lost control of their car. I know Kyle Larson did it one time. A few other drivers did it. So the drivers had their hands full, and it seemed like both lanes of the racetrack, the bottom and the middle groove, were working. So passing wasn't too hard. It's just Richmond is just known for those long green flag runs and not too many cautions for incidents and stuff like that. So, as far as like the racing was concerned, I thought it was good. It's just that's honestly what you expect from Richmond. You expect those long green flag runs and all that kind of stuff. And I liked that strategy came into play, even though I didn't really know what was going on because my scanner wasn't working. But I'm sure if that was working, I could hear everything going on and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was pretty cool. But yeah, just to conclude my thoughts, obviously congrats to Denny Hamlin on getting the win. Toyota came into the week needing to perform, and all the Joe Gibbs cars ended up performing. All 4 of them finished in the top 9, so great sign for Joe Gibbs Racing to get on the right track as far as, coming into this week. This was one of their best racetracks, and they needed to perform, and they did just that. So that's pretty much my thoughts and a little bit of my experience. I'll probably include a few videos or pictures in there for you guys. But yeah, Matthew, what do you got to say about watching the race from the television screen? I'm sure your experience was a little bit less overwhelming or less exciting than mine, but what do you have to say about the race from what you saw from the TV side of things?
Well, first of all, before I get to the Cup race, I want to talk about the that finish with the Xfinity race, because I got a lot to say about this finish. First of all, Ty Gibbs, 3rd win of the season. I mean, once again, just shows he can just win about anywhere. He can win a road courses, mile and a half, a super speedway, which Atlanta is now, and now short track at Richmond. So he just keeps on continuing winning, and those last few laps were crazy with teammates. It was shades of 2016 with Carl Edwards and Kyle Busch battling out for the win. It was also shades of 2012 at Richmond when it was the 18 car and the 54 car side by side for the win. But what really drives me nuts about this whole thing, NASCAR fans are just dumb sometimes. I'm just going to be perfectly blunt here. Because apparently, if you're a Toyota, if you're Kyle Busch, or if you're a famous last name driver in a Toyota, if you bump someone on the way, it is illegal, apparently. But if you're in a Chevy, if you're in a Hendrick car, it's perfectly fine. Here's some examples. Everyone was happy when Alex Bowman took out Hamlin at Martinsville last year. Everyone was happy last week about Ross Chastain basically dumping Allmendinger for the win. And everyone was happy when Carl Edwards moved Kyle Busch out the way for 2016. But apparently they start crying when a Toyota driver does it, so that doesn't make sense to me. I mean, the move itself, it's not like he wrecked John Hunter Nemechek and basically, John Hunter Nemechek finished like dead last or something. They both finished 1-2 still. It was still a JGR 1-2. So that, as long as they were able to finish 1-2 still, I feel like it was completely fine. So I thought it was fine because John Hunter Nemechek was bumping out of the way. Ty Gibbs was bumping him out of the way too. So it was fine. It's short. Hey, like Denny Hamlin once said, it's short track racing. So I'm perfectly fine with that finish. It's just NASCAR fans are just so biased sometimes. So it is what it is. I feel bad for Ty Gibbs getting hate because he's such a nice guy, but just because he's in a Toyota and with a famous last name too, he's going to get hated on naturally, which is pretty ironic for the people that do hate him because they cheer for someone else with a famous last name. But anyways, I'm going to talk about the Cup race now. Enough about the Xfinity. Can we just talk about the pre-race show just keeps on digging itself into a deeper hole of misery? And Jimmy, I'm so glad you're at the racetrack because you didn't have to suffer through the absolute disaster that we have to be forced to watch every time before a race. It just gets worse and worse. I just can't wait for NBC to come back. I know they don't do any of this cringe like Fox does. Just give me NBC back. We need it, but so bad. I can't take it anymore. I can't wait for Martinsville now, so I don't have to watch any more of that. Please.
Yeah, 2 weeks in a row I'll be at the racetrack, so I don't have to worry about watching any pre-race stuff for any of the series. So I guess that's a good thing.
Anyways, let's get on to the race here. Richmond's a very complicated racetrack, to be honest. Richmond is basically how Atlanta was until recently, that is. But Atlanta when it was the old service, but like Richmond is basically how Atlanta was, but on a short track basically. The drivers like it, but if you're watching it on a TV screen, it doesn't look that entertaining. It looks boring. But I think what made this race interesting still was the strategy. Who is on that right strategy? Which strategy is going to win the race? And William Byron was looking like he had the strategy to win, but it ended up being Denny Hamlin, who had fresher tire, who pitted later than Byron, and that's how he won the race there. So the strategy in the ending of this race basically made it interesting, in my opinion. For the casual viewer, it's going to look really boring. I mean, my dad said it was boring, but the casual viewer, it's going to look boring. But if you're a diehard long NASCAR fan, I think it's still interesting because there's a lot of strategy that's involved here, and that keeps on making it interesting. I mean, just because there's not a lot of cautions, not a lot of wrecks, doesn't mean it's boring. They can still make a race interesting, and strategy yesterday, made that race interesting. And I will say this about the Fox broadcast. Chad Canals being in the booth was really good yesterday's race because of Richmond becoming a strategy race. Chad Canals was literally the perfect guy in the booth to explain that, and I feel like Chad Canals did an amazing job there. Man, just give Chad Canals that third spot for the rest of the season, please. I know he's gonna be at Martinsville, so I won't be able to hear that, but I think he'll do pretty good there as well. So, but yeah, Denny Hamlin ended up winning and basically broke the young gun streak that started from last year. I think it was either Kyle Larson that started or Bubba Wallace's win in Talladega that started the young gun win streak. But Denny Hamlin broke the streak. He's like 40. He's like in his lower 40s, I think. And yeah. He's had a rough start to the season, but he's got a win now, and I think it's Joki's Racing's first win. They needed this. It's Toyota's first win this season. They really needed this. All the JGR cars ran well. Martin Truex was up for a lot of the race. Kyle Busch was up there a lot of the race until this penalty, which still drives me crazy because I didn't hear a single thing about having no tape on the grill. The broadcast was too lazy to even say. The Fox crew was too busy writing up some of the dumbest skits I've ever seen to even explain, hey, you can't put tape on the grill this season. I didn't hear a single thing about that till when that happened. I'm like, what? You gotta be kidding me. I mean, it doesn't matter how good we run, something's gonna happen. But somehow, some way, we still finished top 10, so I had a blast with that. And I guess NASCAR officials were sleeping those 200 laps because nothing else was going on the track, so they were sleeping and decided on last pit stop, hey, let's just give the black flag. We forgot about it. So that made zero sense at all, but somehow we finished top 10, so good enough. And Christopher Bell was also up there for a brief period of time. He finished well. He finished pretty well as well. There was a little conflict with Ryan Blaney and Ross Chastain. They got into each other a little bit. They actually bumped each other a couple times, but I guess nothing else happened. No fight or anything. Just on-track temper there. But yeah, it was it's not the best race. I mean, I think Phoenix was a little bit better, but it still made it interesting with the strategy, and the ending of the race helped that race, be a little bit better. So that's my opinion of it. Yeah, it was a decent race. Richmond's a confusing track for sure. It's a hit or miss when it comes to good races.
Yeah, the one thing I'm frustrated about is, being at Richmond at Martinsville is that I can't see Chad Knaus in the booth because, like you said, he did a really good job this week, and then he's going to be there again next week in Martinsville, so maybe they can get him back in the booth a little bit later in the regular season, hopefully. But yeah, I heard he did really good in the booth, so that's cool that he was able to do that, and Yeah, I mean, Richmond overall, it's hit or miss, like you said. Very, typical, lots of long green flag runs, but I liked the strategy. It's reminded me of old NASCAR racing before the stages were a thing, because back then, when there were no stages, you could have like a 200 lap run at Richmond. So, I mean, I'm kind of glad that the stages exist now, so we only got like, I don't know, 130 lap run to the end or something like that, but it still brought strategy into play, which is cool. So I just can't believe Denny Hamlin made up that much ground in 25 laps. I mean, he was 14 seconds. That's half the racetrack. He made up half the racetrack in 25 laps, which is pretty impressive. And like I think William Byron really started to struggle with about 10 laps ago, and that's when Martin Truex Jr. really started reeling him in. So I think that's when Denny Hamlin really started to make up some ground as well. But let me go over the top 10 very quick, and then we'll hop into our ratings, and then we'll get out of here. So Denny Hamlin gets the win. Kevin Harvick, he slipped into the top 10. Great run for him. Two of the veterans leading the way right there. William Byron still hung on for a third place finish, which is great after running 90 laps on a set of tires. Martin Truex Jr. finished 4th. Kyle Larson 5th. He wasn't really in the top 5 all day, but kind of snuck his way up in there because of the strategy. Christopher Bell 6th. He was up front all day. Ryan Blaney 7th. He was also up there most of the day. Alex Bowman 8th. Kyle Busch 9th. And Austin Dillon 10th. So 300 drivers in the top 10. 4 Jokers Racing drivers in the top 10. That's pretty much what you're going to expect at these short track.
Where's the other Hendrick driver? What happened
Chase
to him?
finished. I think Chase finished 14th. Like he was in the top 5 for the first and second stage, and then I think they just made a bad adjustment on the car. Kind of like Martinsville in the fall last year, and he just dropped like a rock and couldn't really make any ground up, unfortunately. But it is what it is. We'll bounce back.
Alan Gumpus
Still,
moment right there.
We're still tied for the points lead, so that's the one good thing coming out of Richmond for us at least. But yeah, that's the top 10. Rating the race. I don't know what I gave Phoenix, but I'm going to give Richmond like half off of that. I think I gave Phoenix like a 7 or something like that. So I'll say a 6.5 for Richmond. It's your typical. I mean, I didn't really expect anything too much more than what we got at Richmond, honestly. But the fact that there was a lot of strategy in that third stage, that was really cool to see how that all played out. Didn't really know who was going to win until the final few laps there. So I liked the whole strategy and all that kind of stuff at the end. So I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. So Matthew, what are you going to rate the race at Richmond?
I'll actually give it a 7 out of 10. I would have given him a 6 out of 10. But I think the last 20 laps made the race really interesting. So I think that's what saved it from going a 6 out of 10. So I think with the strategies, keep it interesting. And I think with the last 20 laps making the lead interesting, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
And also hopping into our fantasy this week, I made a dumb mistake. I didn't even tell you this, but I completely forgot to do the matchup thing. So the 4 matchups that you have to pick a driver, I didn't do any of those, so I'm kicking myself a little bit for that. I think I would have gotten 2 of them right, so that's 20 points I don't have. I'm kind of kicking myself for it, but I think you ended up winning, like out of the 5 or 6 of us, you got the most points at 231. I got 191. Should have been 20 more than that if I did my picks, but oh well. And now we're only separated by 3 points. I'm at 1,230. You're at 1,227. So you close the gap once again. I kind of stretched it 2 weeks ago, but you close right back to a 3-point gap. So it's going to be interesting over the next few weeks how the fantasy goes. But do you have any other closing thoughts before you go ahead and wrap the video up?
Nothing much. I've ranted on Fox enough, and I've ranted on the whole Ty Gibbs incident enough, so I'm good.
Yeah, so our next possibly 3 videos will be in person for you guys. We won't have this side-by-side thing because we're going to have to do our Martinsville preview video together. We're going to vlog our experience at Martinsville, and we'll probably do the race review together too. So our next 2 to 3 videos, we should be side-by-side, actually in person next to each other for you guys. So that'll be cool. Make sure you guys stay tuned. Lots of cool content coming from Martinsville next weekend. But until next time, we'll see you guys in our next video.